Okay, my name is Christian Budd, and we are going to be walking through the first part of installing the IRTTCS, which is the iRacing Total Team Control System, which is this paint swapping utility for iRacing. So if you've gone to the forums and you follow the link to GitHub, you'll be able to download this installer for the IRTTCS and the installer data here. We need both those. And to get us going here, we're going to double click this install. It'll ask you if you want to create a desktop shortcut and things like that. It will also ask you where you want to install it. This is a couple times I've done this now doing these videos, so I've already got it set. So when I hit next, it's just going to go where it was. But we're going to make that install. And then it'll ask if we want to launch. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then it does go through these first setup things here. And this is just setting up your paths for the iRacing paint folder. Typically, that's just going to be the normal paint folder that you use for trading paints and everything else, where iRacing actually reads your paint files. It'll auto detect that usually, but if you've moved it somewhere else, you can browse and find it as well. And then this is where it's going to put the master database. It should install this when we launch the program, but we want to know where it is at. So this is where it's going to go here. You can change that location as well if you wanted to and move that. But right now, it's just easiest to kind of keep it in this spot. So we're going to say next, and we can start the application. And the first thing we're going to notice here is schedules loaded 0, settings loaded, which we really have none. There's no schedules that are loaded in this. So we're going to actually exit the program here. No, we don't need to save changes. And this is why we needed the installer data here. So if we open that zip file, then we're going to find our AI rosters, driver database, and schedules. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get over to this area in our documents where it installed the file structure for this program, and then we're going to dump these files in, copy paste, and now when we look in them, they're all going to be loaded up with all the different rosters that I've created already for this program. Okay, and then we can just go ahead and go back to the program to load it up, and let's open that back up. And now what we're going to see is it's loading these rosters, and it's going to load these schedules and all the stuff that we put in here, AI ratings, etc. Okay. Before we flip over to that page, you should enter your user ID in here. This is just so that if you're using these, keep my car persistent, which most people probably would, because you'll be wanting to race your same paint file or paint number or whatever each time. If it doesn't know your user ID, then it can't make that work. So if I click here, it'll keep my car persistent. So right now I would always be driving the number 1 car paint file. Even if my number is 10 or 12 or whatever, it's always going to assign the number 1 car paint files to my user ID. You can also do this by manual selection, so you could just go in there and you could find your paint, and it will always apply that from your master database to your car. So that's another way to do it. But you know, that's kind of not the recommended way to do it, just because if you're changing cars around, you would have to keep changing this. But if you do it by auto, then as long as the car number is in there that you use, then it should work. Use custom number TGA. If you're using custom numbers, you're going to want to click that box so that it writes the files in the appropriate format. If you're not using custom numbers, you want to keep that unchecked. And then clean car files and exit. This is just the same as Trading Paints works. If you don't have this on, then it will not delete your files, and you can end up with big bloated paint files for your iRacing paints, because there's a bunch that are left over in there that you're not necessarily using. So recommend to have that turned on. And then over here, we'll go over to schedule, and this is where we can select the different schedules and things like that for our paint swapping utility. And you know, you can create a new schedule in here if you want. So if you wanted to create the upcoming iRacing, you know, season schedule for whatever vehicle you're going to use, you could do that by just making a new schedule. And, you know, say you were doing GT3 season 3 2026, for instance. You know, you could make that schedule and then you could populate it, and you would set the number of races, so it's a 12 race season, and then you would set the tracks, you know, whatever they are, and that's how that would work. You could select the car, so it would be a road car, GT3 class, whatever car you're using, and on and on and on. That's how you do schedules. I'm going to go ahead and delete that schedule because I'm not going to go that far. And then let's see if it, yeah. So there are a few bugs. It kind of persisted that 12 race schedule on there where it shouldn't have. So I didn't save when I changed it. It's obviously fixed it now, but just be aware. It's still in beta, so some of that stuff still might happen. When you create a schedule, you can also name your own category for it. So I made this 1987 Cup schedule, and this is, I named it NASCAR Cup 1980s. That's just if you had a lot of these schedules and you didn't want to have this going all the way down your page here, you could say, well, I just want to see the 2000s Cup NASCAR stuff, and now it's only going to show me those. So it's just a little bit of a way to filter these things to make it a little easier for you. There's ARCA schedule. I've only got the one. So otherwise, if I go back to all schedules, then I can scroll and see everything. So that's how that works. And then let's go back to this and back to this. It seemed to save this GT3 setup here for some reason. I don't know why, so we're going to switch that back to our ARCA cars. And we'll save that. There we go. So now it's saved. Okay, so that is how you select schedules. Pretty straightforward. You can, like I said, use these preloaded ones that I've already created. With schedules, you know, with cars that have multiple different models, this is how you would see the different paint schemes that you would have for them for very specific reasons, or set up secondary paints by selecting the model. You do it by model and by season. So that's how that works. The last thing we're going to talk about on this particular video is this season. So in order for the application to see your paint files, you have to have a season for it to look at. Okay, so let's do this to be very simple. Let's go to the 2005 Cup season that I created. And right now we can see it's looking for car number 17. Primary paint is not found. Okay, and that's because it's looking in our master database, in our season that's called custom season, and it's not finding a number 17 paint file. So how do we add paint files to this so it can see them? So what we'll do is we're going to go to our master database once again. Okay. And then the easiest way to do it is to navigate to the folder that has your paint files. I will say one oddity with this is it has put these stock cars paints into these subfolders, which on my own personal iRacing paint thing doesn't do that. It just puts them out with the rest of these. It doesn't matter exactly, but you have to know where to look so you can find your folder. So if we go into stock cars, then we're going to see in here Ford Taurus 03. If we open that, we see custom season. So that is what that sees, is right there. Okay. But there's no folder. There's folders in here, but there's no paints in here. Generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend that you populate the custom season folder. You should copy this, paste it, rename it to whatever you want. We'll name this one 2005 Cup. Try and pick a naming structure that makes sense to you. And when we do that, then we can go in here and we've got a folder for primary paints, for primary super speedway paints, secondaries, and secondary super speedway. So if I had paint files, which I do, I'm going to go to my own paint files here, and let's find the Stock Cars 03 Taurus. There it is. Okay, so we can have it. See, I have a 2005 Cup season going here, and I'm going to take the 17 car, and I'm going to put this in primary because this is the primary paint that he used for most of his races. So that's what I want in primaries. And then also, I'll go ahead and put in one of his secondary schemes. So if I go to that 17 and we find here's the Carhartt car, let's grab that and we'll put that in secondaries. This is how it sees the paints, okay? So now when I go back to this, now it won't populate it until you switch away. So let's switch to the Monte Carlo, and then let's switch back to the Taurus. And then we can see our season is now populating. We can select it. And then we'll go to our car number. Let's go to 17. And now you can see it sees this primary paint here. Okay. Now it also sees a paint, that's that Carhartt paint, but it also sees this USG sheetrock paint. The reason why it sees that is because I already populated this secondary grid with cars. So if I were to, so it allows this when it sees secondary paint files that have the car number in the right folders, in the right seasons, then it's going to allow you to select them. So what you'll notice is this 2005 USG sheetrock car, that's already here. But it won't let me add that anywhere else because that's from when I saved this season before. But the only one it sees right now is the Carhartt car. So I could add the Carhartt car as a secondary for Daytona, for instance. But I can't add it, I can't add this USG sheetrock car because it doesn't see it. It's not in that my database. Also, when it goes to load these paint schemes, if it can't find this, then it's just going to fall back to this primary, okay? So if you downloaded all the primaries, but you didn't have any of the secondaries, it would work just fine. It would just load primaries for everybody, but unfortunately, it would not load your secondaries that you don't own. You have to have them in your database, okay? So that's how you set this up, okay? And to get started, you should take one of these seasons, or you can create a new season. You can create your own season folder inside your master database, and you can start populating paints in there. It's very important that you have this file structures. So the number, #, and the number, the driver name, the year, and then everything after that does not matter. That is just descriptors for you to keep track of your own paint files. But the application needs to know the number so that it can apply this paint scheme correctly. It uses the name for AI stuff down the road. So if you're using AI rosters or anything like that, that's very helpful to have the name of the driver in there. And then the year is actually just a cutoff signal for it. So once it sees the year, it knows, okay, I'm done reading. So that's why it needs to be that way. But very important to have that number in there, in that name, just so to kind of keep things even and the same for some other features that are hopefully be coming down the road. So this is what gets you started. you could now go to settings and start your automated sync. And once you've opened up, if you entered a session with the 03 car, you could start matching by car number or by random, whatever, these different, options for how it applies paint schemes. But you could start that right now. You have your cars in there, you have your everything set up, and so you could do it, and it would pull those paint files. The next video, we're going to talk about just a little bit more in depth of how you could do with your AI racing and creating these roster files and things like that. But that'll be for the next one.